I married a man I had never seen before. I didn't even know what he looked like until the moment he walked into the wedding hall. His father had passed away years ago, and she raised him alone. You'll see him on the wedding day, my mother had said with a smile. He's a good man, respectful and responsible. That's what matters. When his eyes landed on me, I noticed him pause. Just for a second. A small moment. But it said a lot. She was proud of that, and it showed in every word she spoke during the meetings. He didn't react dramatically. But something shifted in his expression, maybe curiosity. It was a traditional arranged marriage. My parents chose the groom after a few meetings with his mother. He was her only son. There were no introductions between me and him. Not even a photo. So, on the day of the wedding, I sat in the bridal dress, nervous but quiet. And then he entered. She handled the house, gave the instructions, set the tone. I didn't expect anything more. We were strangers. He looked around, unsure of where to walk. But it became clear, she didn't like the space I was starting to take in her son's life. I followed her rules. I did what I was told. He didn't smile. She was planning something else, something that I didn't see coming. Another day, he brought me a shawl, saying the evenings were getting cold. I was a rival. Small gestures. Simple words. But different from before. After the wedding rituals, everything moved fast. We returned to his home that night. His mother was at the center of everything. She gave me a room, some folded clothes, and a long list of rules. Wake up early, help with the housework, serve breakfast before her son leaves, don't go out without permission. I quietly accepted it. It was her home. For the first few days, my husband barely spoke. We shared a room, but not much conversation. He was polite, but distant. But slowly, things started to change. If he praised the food I cooked, she changed the topic. If he sat beside me for more than a few minutes, she called him into her room. One morning, he asked if I had eaten breakfast. And each time he showed a little care, I noticed his mother's expression change. If he asked me how I was, she interrupted. At first, I thought it was just adjustment. A new home, a new life, different personalities. The more he looked in my direction, the more she frowned. Still, I stayed quiet. But she wasn't just testing me. Because for her, I wasn't a daughter-in-law. And soon, she was going to make sure I understood that clearly. My husband had just started getting close to me. But the closer he came, the more his mother pulled him away, without saying a single word to me. Days after the wedding, our life settled into a routine. I woke up early, helped with housework, served meals, and stayed quiet. If I forgot to eat, he'd ask, "Why didn't you have lunch? You said you liked these, right?" I was surprised because I had only mentioned it once. These weren't dramatic gestures, but they were enough to make me feel seen. And she didn't like what she saw. If he complimented my cooking, she would immediately criticize something else. My husband left for work in the morning and returned by evening. In those first few weeks, we were still learning how to live together. It wasn't love yet, but we were no longer strangers. When I came out, covered in dust, she looked at me and said, "I didn't say anything, but I did all the housework myself. You should clean yourself up. My son will be home soon. Don't let him see you like this." That silence said enough. He started noticing small things. If I looked tired, he'd say, "Don't do all the work alone." One evening, he brought a packet of sweets and handed it to me. He said, "You knew I'd be hungry when I got home. Why is dinner not ready?" Before I could answer, his mother added, "She's always slow." I didn't say anything, but she doesn't manage time well. But his mother noticed everything too. She began watching us from a distance. If we shared a short conversation, she'd walk into the room. At night, she called him into her room and kept him there for long conversations. When he returned, he was quiet. Not cold, but changed. Maybe with time, he'd see the truth himself. But she was careful. She never raised her voice. She never insulted me in front of him. Just quiet words, well-timed lies, and planted doubts. I didn't know what she said to him, but I could feel it slowly affecting him. One afternoon, she asked me to clean the storeroom. It was dusty and packed with old boxes. I spent hours sorting and sweeping. I didn't reply. I went straight to the bathroom. That evening, when my husband came home, she told him she slept most of the afternoon. He looked confused but didn't say anything to me. From that day on, she started repeating the same pattern. She made me do more work when he wasn't around, then complained about me when he came home. I knew what she was doing, but I didn't know how to prove it. I had no one to speak to. Gradually, his tone changed. Not harsh, but colder. One night, I served dinner late because I had been cleaning up a broken jar she had dropped in the kitchen. I looked at him. He avoided my eyes. The distance had started growing. Still, I kept quiet. I thought maybe it was temporary. I started feeling like a stranger in my own home. And the worst part? I couldn't even blame him completely. He was listening to the person he trusted the most, his mother. And slowly, her words were replacing mine in his mind. But what none of them knew was that I was already reaching my limit. And something was coming that would change everything, whether they were ready for it or not. From sunrise to nightfall, I worked in that house. But to my husband, she said I did nothing. Instead, she acted like it was expected, and not enough. And he believed her. She gave me a list in the morning and checked it by noon. I did all this myself when I was your age. I thought if I followed every instruction, things would get better. But they didn't. The more I worked, the more she criticized. And behind my back, she twisted every effort into laziness. If even one thing wasn't done, she complained. But he didn't say anything to defend me. Every day began before the sun. I woke up quietly, cleaned the kitchen, prepared breakfast, and got dressed before anyone else. My mother-in-law never praised it. She handed me chore after chore. If I finished one thing, she added 3 more. Still not finished, she'd say. At first, I tried to be patient. She just walks around slowly and takes breaks all the time. The result was the same. His mother's version of the day always sounded more convincing. When my husband came home, she was ready. She doesn't help me much, she told him. I stood there, quietly, still holding the dishcloth or broom in my hands. He glanced at me, uncertain. One night, after dinner, he asked, "Are you having trouble managing things?" I replied calmly, "No. I'm doing everything she asks." He nodded but didn't look convinced. That night, he said, "You need to take your responsibilities more seriously." That was the start of the distance. No matter how early I woke up, how clean the floor was, or how perfectly I folded his clothes. She used her tone carefully. Never angry. Always concerned. "I don't want to say this," she told him one evening while I was in the kitchen, "but I think she just doesn't know how to manage a household." That night, he barely spoke to me. The next morning, she made me clean the storage area. Boxes, shelves, furniture, I was there all day. My hands were scraped from lifting heavy things. My back hurt. I skipped lunch. And still, she said nothing. That evening, she told my husband, she spent the day resting. I let her take it easy. He looked at me and asked, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yes." I didn't tell him the truth. Because even if I did, would he believe me? One day, I forgot to iron one of his shirts. Just one shirt. That was the moment I knew, it wasn't just her lies. It was his trust that had started to shift. The woman who hadn't said more than 10 words to me directly, had already built a wall between us. And I was getting tired. Tired of working. Tired of silence. Tired of being made to look like a failure. But I kept going. Until one day, my body gave out before my will did. And that's when everything started to unravel. I kept quiet through the chores, the lies, and the distance. But the day I collapsed, my silence finally broke, without saying a word. It was an ordinary morning, just like the others. I was up before everyone, swept the floors, washed the dishes, made tea, and started cooking breakfast. My body was tired, but I didn't let it show. I had learned to keep moving, even when it hurt. My mother-in-law gave me the usual list. "Mop the living room, wash the curtains, and clean out the spice drawers," she said, sipping tea while I stood beside her. I nodded and got to work. By noon, I hadn't had a proper meal. My legs were aching, and my hands were shaking slightly, but I ignored it. I had grown used to the feeling. As I stood at the kitchen sink washing vegetables for lunch, my vision started to blur. My head felt heavy. Then everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the sofa, a wet cloth on my forehead, and my husband pacing nearby. The moment I stirred, he rushed toward me. "You fainted," he said. "Why didn't you tell anyone you weren't feeling well?" I tried to sit up. I thought I was just tired. He didn't speak. He helped me drink water and called a doctor to visit the house. His mother stood nearby, arms crossed, eyes watching me closely. She didn't say anything. When the doctor arrived and checked me, his expression changed after the examination. She's not just tired, he said. She's pregnant. For a few seconds, the room went quiet. My husband looked at me. His eyes widened, but not in panic, just surprise. Then he nodded slowly, as if trying to absorb the news. You need to rest, the doctor added. She shouldn't be doing heavy work, especially not in the first few months. After the doctor left, my husband stayed silent. He sat beside me, staring at the floor. Then he said, "Why didn't you tell me you were feeling this weak?" I looked at him. You never asked. That sentence stayed in the air for a while. That night, he didn't eat with his mother like usual. He stayed with me. Brought me water, helped me lie down, even made tea and brought it himself. It was the first time in weeks that I saw real concern in his eyes, not filtered through her voice, not clouded by her words. But that shift, his attention, his worry, his care, was noticed. And not welcomed. The next morning, I woke up late. My husband had already told his mother, she needs rest. Don't give her anything heavy to do. His mother didn't argue. She just nodded quietly and went about her work. But I knew her silence wasn't surrender. It was planning. She had seen the way he looked at me. She had seen the change. And now, she knew, if she didn't act soon, she would lose the one thing she never wanted to share, her son's loyalty. After the pregnancy news, he started caring like never before. But with every small act of love, his mother's silence grew colder, and more dangerous. Ever since the doctor confirmed I was pregnant, my husband's behavior changed overnight. He stopped believing his mother's complaints and began checking on me directly. He brought fruit on his way home. He made sure I had lunch. Sometimes, he even helped in the kitchen, quietly, without making it a big deal. At night, he brought me warm milk and asked if I needed anything else. It felt like a shift. He wasn't distant anymore. He wasn't doubting me. He was present. And careful. But the person who had the hardest time with this change was his mother. She said nothing for the first few days. No sarcastic comments. No complaints. Just quiet observation. Watching us. Listening. But her silence didn't mean peace. It meant planning. She didn't like that her son now questioned her words. She didn't like that I could say something, and he would believe me. She especially didn't like the way he spoke to me, gently, protectively. That evening, I overheard her on the phone with someone. He's changing. Ever since she got pregnant, he listens only to her. I didn't raise him alone just to lose him like this. The next morning, she became overly polite. She brought me water, offered me a chair in the kitchen, even told me to rest while she cooked. It felt strange. Too quiet. When my husband came home, she smiled and said, "She's been resting today, like the doctor said. I'm taking care of everything." It sounded nice, but it didn't feel right. Later that night, when we were alone, my husband said, "She's trying. Let her." I nodded, but deep down, I wasn't convinced. It wasn't change. It was strategy. And I was right. Because 2 days later, I found her standing at the gate, talking to a young man I didn't recognize. She handed him something in an envelope, and he nodded and walked away quickly. When she came inside and saw me, she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That evening, she brought up an old neighborhood story. "Do you remember what happened to that girl from 2 streets away?" she said casually to her son. "Everyone thought she was a nice wife. Then they found out she was sneaking out at night to meet someone." My husband looked confused. "What does that have to do with anything?" She shrugged. "I'm just saying, sometimes people aren't what they seem." He didn't respond. But the message was clear, she was planting suspicion again. Only this time, it wasn't just words. She was setting something up. Something bigger. And I had no idea that soon, a lie was coming, one that could destroy everything we'd built. She thought her plan was perfect, hire a man to ruin my name. What she didn't know was, the man she sent, knew someone who knew me well. A few days after that strange envelope exchange, things in the house shifted again. My mother-in-law returned to her cold silence. No more fake kindness. No more helpful offers. Just short, dry orders. I followed them without protest. But I felt something coming. She stopped looking at me like an inconvenience, and started looking at me like a problem she had already solved. Then one evening, when my husband came home from work, she looked unusually serious. "Something happened today," she said to him. "You need to know." I stood still, watching. "There's a boy from the neighborhood," she began slowly. "He came to me and said he sees your wife, outside late at night. Alone. He said she meets someone." My heart stopped. My husband's expression tightened. "Who?" "He didn't give a name," she replied. "But he seemed sure. He said he didn't want to speak up, but he felt responsible." I stepped forward. That's not true. I've never stepped out of this house alone. She looked at me calmly. That's what you'll say. But people are watching. You should be careful. My husband stayed silent for a long time. He didn't look at her, or at me. Then he stood up and left the room without saying anything. The rest of the evening passed quietly. He didn't speak to me. He didn't look angry, but he was distant again, just like before. The next morning, I heard a voice at the door. A man had come. My mother-in-law called my husband out to speak with him. I watched from the hallway. It was the same man I had seen with her days ago, the one she gave the envelope to. He greeted my husband politely and began talking. I couldn't hear the full conversation, but I caught fragments. She comes out late. I've seen her, near the back street. All lies. But then, something unexpected happened. Another voice entered the conversation. A younger woman stepped in, my husband's cousin. She had just arrived from her college hostel for a visit. She looked at the man and frowned. Why are you here? He hesitated. I was just talking to. You're my classmate's brother, she interrupted. What are you doing talking about Bobby like this? He froze. She looked at my husband and said firmly, this man is lying. I've seen him talking to Auntie before. They know each other. That moment changed everything. My husband turned toward the man. Do you know my mother? The man panicked. I mean, she only asked me to keep an eye. That's all. My husband stepped closer. Did she pay you? The man didn't answer. But his silence was enough. He left quickly, and my husband turned to his mother. You paid someone to accuse her, he asked, his voice cold. She tried to defend herself. I did it for you. She's changing you. You don't even sit with me anymore. You only care about her. He stared at her without blinking. If you ever try to lie about her again, I'll take her and leave this house. For good. Her face went pale. She had pushed too far. And now, she was the one standing on uncertain ground. She had finally crossed the line. And for the first time, my husband didn't stay silent, he stood between me and his mother. After the man left and the truth came out, the house was silent for hours. No shouting. No crying. Just silence. My husband didn't speak to his mother that evening. He helped me prepare tea, brought it to the room, and sat beside me, calm but distant. His mind was clearly running in all directions. Finally, he spoke. I'm sorry. For everything I believed before. I nodded. You believed the person you trusted. He looked at me. That trust was used. He didn't need to say more. That one sentence meant he had finally seen it all, how his mother twisted words, planted lies, and nearly destroyed what we were slowly building. The next morning, he didn't go to work. He sat with his mother instead. I stayed in the kitchen, but I could hear every word. I've ignored things for too long, he told her. I gave you the benefit of the doubt because you're my mother. But now I know what you've been doing. She didn't deny it this time. She tried to justify it. I was only protecting you. You don't know how fast women change after marriage. They take everything from their husbands. I didn't want her to take you away from me. You're not losing me, he said firmly. You're pushing me away. She raised her voice. So now you'll believe her over me? I don't believe lies. I believe what I see, he said. Then came the final words, the ones that changed the dynamic forever. If you try anything like this again, I'll leave this house with my wife. And you'll lose both of us. Her face went blank. She never thought he'd say it. Not her son. Not the boy she raised alone. But he had said it. Clearly. Without hesitation. After that conversation, everything shifted. She stopped interfering in our conversations. She didn't call him to her room every night. She didn't assign me endless chores. She still spoke coldly, but she had lost her grip. And he noticed everything. He spent more time at home, helped me more, and listened to me without second-guessing. We were finally becoming a team, not two people separated by someone else's control. But even though the fight was over, the tension still hung in the air. His mother wasn't done. She had been warned. She had been exposed. But deep down, I knew, she hadn't truly accepted me yet. She was silent, yes. But silence didn't always mean peace. After everything she did, her sudden kindness didn't feel real. It felt like something else was coming. The day after my husband warned her, my mother-in-law changed. She didn't shout. She didn't complain. She didn't assign extra chores. For the first time since I entered the house, she walked past me without saying a word. It wasn't warm, but it also wasn't cold. At lunch, she quietly asked, "Do you want me to make you something light to eat?" I looked up, confused. "No, thank you. I've already eaten." She nodded and left the room. That was the first time she had asked me anything without an order attached. My husband noticed too. "She's trying," he said later that night. "Maybe she finally understands." I wasn't so sure. Kindness, after weeks of manipulation, didn't erase anything. She hadn't apologized. She hadn't admitted to anything. She had just gone quiet. But I didn't argue. I let things unfold. In the following days, she started helping me in small ways. She'd sweep the front yard before I woke up. She'd prepare breakfast and tell me to rest. She even brought tea to our room one evening, without being asked. To anyone watching from the outside, it looked like a complete change. But inside, I was still cautious. Because people like her didn't change overnight. Not without a reason. One evening, while I was folding clothes in the bedroom, she walked in without knocking. "You should start putting your feet up more," she said. "It's not good for the baby if you keep working all day." I stared at her. She hadn't said a single word about the pregnancy until now. Then she added, "We should probably start preparing a few things. There's not much time left." It was the first time she acknowledged what was coming, not just a baby, but the fact that I was part of this family. I nodded. "Yes. I'll make a list." She didn't stay long. She left as quietly as she had come. That night, I told my husband. "She's being kind, but it doesn't feel natural." He replied, "Let her try. That's all she can do now." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that things could be normal. But the past still sat between us, everything she had said, everything she had done. Her silence didn't erase it. Still, I gave her space. I responded politely. I let her help when she offered. And slowly, the atmosphere of the house began to shift. There were fewer arguments. Fewer tense meals. Fewer whispered conversations behind closed doors. Maybe it wasn't full peace yet, but it was something. A pause. A calm. And for the first time, I began to think that maybe, just maybe, when the baby arrived, this house might actually feel like a home. She once tried to destroy my marriage. Now she was helping fold baby clothes with her own hands. A few weeks after that strange silence turned into unexpected calm, something shifted again, this time, not with conflict, but with purpose. The baby's arrival was approaching fast. Doctor appointments became more regular, and my husband began checking in almost every hour when he wasn't at work. Then one afternoon, my mother-in-law knocked on my door, not with orders or questions, but with a notebook in her hand. "I thought we should make a list," she said. I blinked, unsure. "List? For the baby? Clothes, supplies, bedding, bottles. You won't be in the condition to run around last minute." It was a practical gesture. But in this house, coming from her, it meant something bigger. She sat with me for over an hour. No taunts. No jabs. Just planning. That weekend, we went to the market together. My husband came too. It was the first time the three of us stepped out like a family. She picked out soft blankets. I noticed her checking labels for fabric quality. She asked about my favorite colors. She even bought a few extra items, "In case it's a boy," she said, even though the doctor had told us not to focus on gender. When we got home, she arranged the items herself. In the following days, she started making simple soups for me. She cut back on the housework she used to dump on me and did most of it herself. Some days, she didn't say much. Other days, she sat beside me and shared stories of my husband's childhood. "He was a quiet baby," she said one evening, folding tiny newborn clothes. "Didn't cry much. But he always wanted to be held." It was the first time she spoke about him with softness, not possession. I listened quietly. I didn't try to turn the moment into anything more than what it was. I still didn't trust her completely. That would take time. But it was clear, she was trying in her own way. My husband noticed the change too. "She hasn't said a single bad thing in weeks," he told me one night. "It feels like she's finally seeing things clearly." I didn't reply right away. Then I said, "Maybe she's realizing she doesn't have to lose you to accept me." He nodded. "Maybe." Day by day, the house grew quieter. Not in a cold way, just more settled. There was no longer tension in every corner. My steps didn't feel watched. My words didn't feel measured. Even the meals at the table started to feel normal. Not perfect. But normal. She didn't apologize for the past. She didn't explain why she did what she did. But she was different now. The baby hadn't even arrived yet, but somehow, that child had already changed the entire rhythm of this house. And for the first time since I got married, I could breathe without wondering what came next. She once hated me. Now she held my newborn son in her arms, and cried. The night before my delivery, I could barely sleep. The doctor had said it could be any day now. My hospital bag was packed. The crib was ready. Tiny clothes were folded neatly in the drawer. Around midnight, I felt the pain start. It was sharp but steady, like a quiet warning. I woke my husband. Within minutes, we were in the car, headed to the hospital. My mother-in-law came too, carrying a prayer book in her hand and quiet worry in her eyes. The delivery was long. Hours passed. Nurses moved in and out. My husband paced the hallway while his mother sat silently in a corner, her hands folded tightly together. And then, just after sunrise, our son was born. When the nurse brought him into the room, everything felt quiet. My husband stood by my side, staring at the baby like he couldn't believe he was real. He didn't speak for a while. He just kept looking. Then, my mother-in-law stepped forward. She didn't ask permission. She didn't hesitate. She simply walked to the crib, picked him up carefully, and held him close. She stared at his face for a long moment, then kissed his forehead gently. And for the first time, I saw tears in her eyes. He looks just like his father did, she whispered. There was no bitterness in her voice. No distance. Just softness. That moment broke something between us, not with words, but with presence. She held him like she had waited her whole life to meet him. From that day, everything truly changed. Back home, she took charge in ways I didn't expect. She made herbal drinks, helped with his naps, and stayed up some nights when he cried, without being asked. She didn't try to take over. She didn't control. She just helped. One night, while I was rocking the baby to sleep, she entered the room quietly and said, "You're doing well. I didn't make it easy for you." I paused, unsure how to respond. Then she added, "I thought love meant keeping my son close to me. But you've shown me it's not about holding on, it's about making space." She didn't say sorry. But maybe she didn't need to. That sentence was enough. From that point on, she was different, not just acting kind, but actually becoming part of the family. She was still firm, still old-fashioned, but she stopped looking at me like an outsider. Now, when my husband came home, she no longer rushed to him first. She let him go straight to me and the baby. And when he held our son in his arms, she smiled, not with jealousy, but with pride. She once tried to keep my husband for herself. Now she asked me for advice on how to put the baby to sleep. A month after the baby was born, the rhythm of our house had changed completely. Gone were the days of quiet hostility and cold glances. In their place were warm meals, shared smiles, and quiet cooperation. No one said it out loud, but we all knew, we had survived something big, and come out different. My husband became more attentive than ever. He woke up early to check on the baby. Sometimes, he even changed diapers before work. At night, he sat with me while I fed our son, his hand gently resting on my shoulder. My mother-in-law watched these moments without interruption. Instead of trying to take over, she joined in, only when needed. One afternoon, while the baby napped, she sat with me in the living room. She didn't give instructions like before. She didn't ask about what chores were done. Instead, she asked how I was feeling, if I was sleeping enough, if I needed anything. That was the first time she asked about me, not just the baby, or her son, but me. "I didn't realize how hard motherhood was," she said softly. "When I was your age, I didn't have any help." I nodded. "It's not easy. But it helps when there's support." She looked down. "I didn't support you at the start. I only saw you as someone who might take him away from me." There was no anger in her voice. Just honesty. I didn't respond right away. Then I said, "You didn't lose him. He's still your son. But now, he's also a father, and my partner." She nodded, quietly accepting it. From that day on, she began asking, not ordering. If she cooked something, she asked if I liked it. If she wanted to help with the baby, she waited for me to say yes. And I let her. Not because I forgot what she did, but because I saw what she was becoming. One morning, I found her humming a lullaby while rocking the baby to sleep. When I stepped into the room, she looked up and said, "He sleeps better when I sing this." I smiled. "Then keep singing." She was no longer trying to own him. She was learning to love him, as his grandmother. And me, not as a threat, but as family. My husband noticed everything. "You've changed the house," he said one evening as we sat in the yard. "You held it together when I couldn't see the truth." I looked at him. "It wasn't easy." "I know," he said. "But you did it, with patience. I won't forget that." For the first time in a long time, I felt peace, not just around me, but within me. No more lies. No more tests. Just a quiet home where love had finally found space to grow. She didn't lose her son, and I didn't lose my marriage. In the end, we both gained something more, a real family. Life settled into a calm rhythm after that. Days passed without tension. Meals were shared without silence. The baby became the center of our world, pulling us all into one orbit, no walls between us anymore. My mother-in-law no longer watched me with suspicion. Instead, she watched the baby, smiling every time he reached for her finger or smiled in his sleep. She learned to respect my role, not as competition, but as someone who shared her love for the same people. She still had her strong opinions. She still told me how she raised her son and what worked for her. But now, it wasn't a command. It was just a suggestion, and I could choose to accept it or not, without fear of consequences. One afternoon, while folding clothes beside me, she said, "You've handled this house better than I ever did." I looked at her, surprised. "You managed everything alone. That takes strength." She shook her head. "Strength isn't in doing it all. It's in holding things together when people try to tear them apart. And I tried to tear you apart." It wasn't an apology, but it was something close. I didn't need her to say sorry anymore. Her actions had already spoken louder. My husband noticed the shift too. "I never thought she'd change," he told me one night. "But I'm glad she did." I smiled. Sometimes people just need time. And a reason. The baby gave her that reason. Watching him grow softened her edges in ways nothing else could. She began living not just for her son, but for his family. For us. Soon, laughter filled the house again, real laughter, not forced or polite. She called neighbors over to see the baby. She showed him off proudly, as if the past didn't exist. And maybe that was okay. Maybe we didn't need to remember every fight. We just needed to remember how we survived it. On the baby's first birthday, she took over all the arrangements, balloons, sweets, food. But she didn't exclude me. She asked what theme I wanted. She asked what dress I had chosen. And when I brought out the cake, she stood beside me, clapping the loudest. That day, I looked around and saw what I had once thought impossible. A family. Not perfect. Not without its history. But healed. When guests left, and the house grew quiet again, she sat beside me and said, "Thank you for not giving up. On him. On this house. Even on me." I didn't reply. I just nodded. Because the truth was, I had wanted to give up, many times. But I didn't. And now, we were here. Not in a fairy tale. But in something better. Something real.